I'm an old man on the Pennine Way again, except I'm not actually on the Pennine Way yet. So this is the second in my preliminary videos, just to see if I can actually do a video that's of any interest to people. On the first day of our trip, it was rainy and the mist was down halfway down Grinds Brook, and we were taking the original route, which was up Grinds Brook. I'm not going that way this time, so this video, if you like, is an attempt to tell you what happened on the first day of our trip. Needless to say, we didn't get to where we were meant to be. I wouldn't exactly say we were lost, but pretty near. And we spent about 3.5 hours ploughing over the peat groughs at the top of Kinder. If you've never done that as they used to be, you're very lucky, and it's not something that I would wish to repeat ever. I have been up to Kinder since we did the way. I did a mountain leadership certificate navigation course up there, and it is actually a lot better up there now than it was when we were there. So anyway, this first video is just going to be what we were trying to do, what we actually did, and where it all went wrong. So that's the introduction. I'll go back to the house and complete it, but I'm afraid there'll be no more movement from now on. It's all going to be maps on the screen. Hopefully the next video will start outside the old Nag's Head. Thanks. This is us setting off on the 12th of August 1967, which is just about over 2 years since the Pennine Way opened. You can see we're just past the Nag's Head, going down the road towards Grinds Brook, because in those days the start was actually past the Nag's Head, not at the Nag's Head, and we're just going down to it. You can see it's already raining, pretty heavily actually, and the mist was already quite low. So we're heading off up to Grinds Brook. If you've watched the first video, you'll have seen this book before. This was the only guidebook that was available at the time, and the one we used. The maps in it weren't brilliant, and you can see the one above. You can't use that to find your way over Kinder Scout. And it doesn't even show you exactly where the path is going. This is the 1-inch Ordnance Survey map that we used on the walk. It was the only one available. The scale is 1:6360, and you can see there's not a lot of detail of the streams on top of the Kinder Plateau. In blue, I've marked the line on there that says Pennine Way Undefined. For those of you that know Kinder, you'll see that the Pennine Way on this map actually goes up Grindslow Knoll. Now, to the best of my knowledge, the Pennine Way never went up Grindslow Knoll. So we hadn't even started, and we'd already got 2 different routes to follow, because our guidebook said go up Grinds Brook. And I've put a red line on the map here, showing you the route that we thought we'd got to take. Our guidebook actually said you arrive on the flat summit of Kinder and you head off in a northwesterly direction to a group of rocks on the skyline. Well, there was no skyline. It was totally hidden by mist. So all we could do was to head over on a compass bearing in the rough direction of Kinder Gates. If you've never been on Kinder in those times, you'll never know what it's like, because it's totally different now. But I've put in a picture here showing one of the peat groughs, and this is actually a small peat grough. The groughs we were going through were about 2 to 3 meters deep, and you had to plough up one side. As you put your foot in, the peat ran down, so you eventually got to the top. You went along over a metre of grass and you immediately had to go down the other side, taking a load more peat with you. And this just went on and on and on. I've put on this map a blue line, which is I think the track that we took. It's about 3 kilometres and it arrives on the northern edge of Kinder, looking out over Clough. It was gone 5 by the time we got there, so we'd been ploughing over the peat groughs for about 3 hours, which is about 1 kilometre an hour. We hadn't seen more than 10 metres in front of us the whole way, and we were absolutely shattered. We eventually worked out where we were, and we decided we would head down into the valley because we couldn't go a lot further that night. A couple of 100 metres after leaving the northern edge of Kinder, we came out of the mist and we could see the whole valley, and we saw there was a shooting hut on the map, so we decided to head across there and try and camp somewhere near it that night. I've marked on the map where the hut was and the route that we took to get there, and I suppose we got there at about 6 o'clock. There were no doors and windows on the hut, and the roof was pretty far gone as well. It was corrugated iron. But we managed to pitch the tent on the side of the stream just below the hut, and we actually used the hut as our cooking area and left the rucksacks in there overnight as well. All my mountaineering experience up until that time had been in North Wales, and I have to say I think the ploughing across groughs for 3 hours affected us mentally, such that if we ever saw the phrase on the map Pennine Way undefined, we had no idea whether there were peat groughs or whether it was grass there, so we tended to avoid it on principle. We now had a problem in that we were miles away from where we should have been. We had to get to a youth hostel in 2 nights' time, and we had to get back on the correct route again. We could have gone westwards up Clough and arrived at the top of Williams Clough and then go up to Mill Hill and across Featherbed Moss. But Featherbed Moss was Pennine Way undefined, so there was no way we were going anywhere near that. And in the end we headed off down the Ashop Clough to the Snake Pass, up the Snake Pass Road, up to Doctor's Gate, and joined the Pennine Way at the bottom of Devil's Dyke. And I've put the track of that on the map in green. So we got to the Doctor's Gate at something like lunchtime the next day. So we'd been going a day and we were something like a day behind already. It had rained the whole night and the tent had leaked, so we were both lying in water when we woke up next morning. It wasn't an ideal start to our adventure. This is a photograph taken at the time. You can see the tent down below. We're actually standing inside the shooting hut and just bringing our clothes up to the top. If you look behind me, you can see there's a plank bridge crossing the stream, and the tent's actually on quite a nice little flat area of land just by the stream. This next photograph was taken about 18 years later, I think. You can see the bridge at the bottom of the slope. You can see the shooting hut has lost its roof entirely and part of the wall has fallen down. But more interestingly, there's absolutely no room to put a tent at the bottom of the slope, so there must have been some sort of slumping of the ground onto exactly where we'd camped. And finally, the last map has got all the different routes on it, including the yellow route, which is the current standard Pennine Way route. So to sum up our first day, we'd walked for about 5 hours, We'd done 4.5 miles, and we had another 3.5 hours walking to get back to where we should have been. It would be quite easy to say the navigation was terrible, but if you look at the tracks that I did and that I should have done, we only missed Kindergates by something like 400 meters. And if I'd have known a bit more about handrailing and aiming off, we would have probably been okay. Thanks for watching the video. That was an old man walking on the Pennine Way again. Thanks very much for watching.